Hey, so I wanted to give this kind of survey and pick from where I left off. After I graduated school, my intention was to illustrate what that place between leaving school and um, whatever else is out there, like I guess the real world, is like. Because when people graduate BFA or MFA, there's a tendency to drop off. So I'm talking about painters, like fine art painters. So I went to fine art painting school at PAFA, and so I started kind of doing a vlog for my friends so they could see my kind of escape or transition from painting into a day job, and then kind of like weaning into a hopefully sales setting, or just trying to like gig it and try to make it work. So my whole journey is graffiti, murals, community college, state college, and then I dropped out. And for a few years, I traveled and apprenticed a mural artist. At that time, I had money from an inheritance, and then I still had money left over, enough to pay for art school. So I went to Ringling College for 2 years. Then I went to PAFA for 2 years. Then I graduated PAFA, and I still had a little bit of money, under 10 grand, but about that. And I still thought, yeah, I should get a day job. And so I started painting houses, doing interior and exterior historic residential painting. And that was pretty, it just is, you're being around chemicals and the labor is somewhat hard. I got a scholarship when I left school for 5 grand to go to England. So I went to England for 3 months. Came back, got a gnarly fever. This is still 2019, so could have been COVID. The whole time I was in England, I felt like I had throat cancer, but I was also smoking. But the air quality there is really shitty as well. And so I just kind of worried, but I kind of kept smoking because when you're alone like that, I've since kind of become very clean. But yeah, smoking and drinking and just wandering around and taking pictures and drawing was my England experience. So I came back here, probably had five grand or so, and spent Christmas in Florida, painted a few houses for money for some labor jobs, then moved back to Philadelphia into Center City. And I needed to kind of not just bleed money. I wanted another job, and I found a job. I went to my PAFA resources, a guy called Greg Martino, and he gave me the number for an antique shop. And so I started helping this antique shop. A couple old guys, they're like both 89 or something, crazy that they're still working. They've been in business for 50 years or so, and they're hoarders. So when they hired me, they said, this is something that you could do. We have, your first task is to clean out the basement. So they paid me $80 a day. They were about 10-hour day. Yeah, because I worked it out, I was getting $8 an hour. And I was basically locked in a basement, cutting boxes and sweeping, and it was dusty, no windows, really fucked up work. And by working there 4 days a week, at the end of the month, I would have earned $1,000 flush, and that was my living expenses. I paid $800 a month for rent and $200 a month for parking. I inherited a car while I was in Florida because my grandmother health became such that she started living with my parents. We tried a assisted living home, and she didn't like that. She's too independent for that. So she lives with my parents now, and that's okay. Everyone's got trauma to sort through, and our family's kind of that style where it's not addressed. Everyone's just gonna die with it, and so that's lame. And hopefully we can change that if new generations come, and etc. So I'm working in an antique shop, and I'm kind of freaking out because I'm losing money still, working a pretty hard job that's really harmful to my health with all the smoke, dust. And COVID happens, we go into quarantine. I get a job as a security guard through Craigslist. Because of COVID, they need security guards, and they'll hire anyone that has a pulse. Then George Floyd was murdered in Minneapolis by that cop, and Black Lives Matter protests began to happen, and they needed even more security officers because riots ensued. The riots ended up kind of swarming Center City, Philadelphia, and kind of coagulating into this like 200 car deep force. And they would organize, and they would say, we're going to hit here now, and tomorrow night we're going to hit here, and it's gonna, at 8 o'clock we're all going to meet at this place. So I was working in the suburbs, and we would get reports. Cops would show up and roll down their window, or people that were scouting for the rest of the kind of swarm, they would show up in video and see like how reinforced we'd made the store and shit like that. And the, you know, where I was working ended up like putting all these pallets against the windows and doors. It was crazy. So by the time, yeah, there was one night where about 200 cars came, and I was working at an anchor store of a mall. I'm not going to say which, but it's the common denominator for, it's the everything store. And about 200 cars swarmed around this mall, and they started driving like 40 miles an hour. And they were like 4 lanes deep. And it's a big mall, and it was bumper to bumper. So it was pretty intimidating, and our kind of job was to play zone defense. There were some cops there, but that was a really gnarly night, and they actually, this group of trucks, about 6 trucks, went back to the loading dock where I'd parked my grandmother's car that I'd inherited, and they like picked through the car. I was in the company car trying to look like a security officer, just trying to look like I was there to do anything, but actually our job was to get out of the way of trouble, and basically we were just milking this situation for money, our company. So a lot of regrettable things, but anyway, you know, our job was not to protect the assets of the companies, which was cool. But so my car ended up shit in the bed. By reducing my overhead, or sort of by way of reducing my overhead, I decided to move into the country, or just anywhere that wasn't Center City, Philadelphia, because, you know, I had to pay, instead of $800 a month, $1,000 a month, because of the $200 in parking that it takes in Center City. So initially I was going to move pretty far into some kind of like working class suburb north of Center City, and I put something online, and someone recommended that I come to where I am now, which is out in the country. I found a good situation. The guy who rented this place to me is a realtor, and he flips houses, and so he kind of inherits all this like nice stuff. So it's furnished, and new things are always kind of coming in. So I'll inherit, like, you know, yeah, I inherited this lamp today, this kind of stuff. And in terms of labor, yeah, my car ended up really shit in the bed. The heads, the gaskets and the heads themselves were in terrible shape, so I gave them to a backyard mechanic. So for a few weeks he had the car, and I was relying on my landlord's car. That became a shitty situation because he started leveraging my borrowing the car against me. It was very unfair, and the work that I was doing for him, the day labor that I was doing for him, he ended up not paying me for one day. 2 weeks after I'd done the work, he said he didn't agree to pay me, which was complete bullshit. And then he started talking about the truck, but the truck that I was borrowing, I would only borrow it. I was very careful not to get burned. I would only borrow it when he asked me to do him a favor, such as move this bed to this property, move this refrigerator to this property. And so I'd do it, and I thought I was doing his work, but he ended up saying, you're using the truck. Really terrible person. So ever since then, I've just not taken anything from him. Everything I've tried to divorce. He's in the middle of a divorce too. It's kind of like I wonder why, and then so anyway. But yeah, he's pawned me off to his friends to do day labor, and so I'm constantly. I've been working every day for the past 4 or 5 months, doing either interior house painting, moving furniture, field work, a lot of weeding and mulching, shoveling, building rock walls, stuff like that. And it really fucking hurts my forearms and hands. And I think about, I think it was, God, Albert Dürer and his brother, they took a wager who was going to go to Paris and be trained to be an artist. And Dürer won, and his brother worked on a farm for like 60 years. And there's this etching by Dürer after all that time of his brother's hands, and they're all fucked up from yard work. So I kind of think about that now, but it's just what I have to do, and I'm getting paid all right. Essentially, if I work 1 week, then I get the month's rent paid for. So I'm getting paid all right, and hopefully I can stack up a tiny bit of money and then do, a 4-month, painting, binge or whatever. I bought a new car, so I was stacking money pretty well at some point in there. And since my backyard mechanic was taking so long and my landlord was being an asshole about me borrowing his car, I bought a used car, and it's much better. It should last me a while. But my whole scheme, I thought, was to make a pile of money and then move to South America or something where I could live way cheaper for like way longer and do a much longer painting binge because my overhead was low. And, my family's calling my parents or anything. They kind of say like, oh, your car shit the bed. Get a new car, get a good reliable car. They don't have time for these schemes, and it makes sense. I mean, I'm an American. I'm not. Yeah. It makes, I still want to try it. I'd probably go to South America for a few months or something like that and have low overhead, and it'll incidentally save me money, but I don't think it's kind of like how I'm kind of thinking that it would be, So yeah, I'm happy, and I can sleep in the car that I bought. So if shit hits the fan, then I can fit everything I own in it and sleep in it, and I hope to do that at some point. That would take the place of South America. I actually don't think about South America that much at all. So that's it. That's where my head's at, and it's kind of about now finding a balance. I basically still work at the antique shop. I basically still work as a security guard. Both of those bosses I told that I'm not available until further notice, but I could start them up again. And I have 4 clients that I can kind of hit up and do work on their properties for. So I'm very, well set up, with the exception that all the work is pretty exploitative, except for the security guard work, which, I try not to have some type of complex about it. I think I'm a very good security guard because I'm good at, it's like someone is pitching a fit. That's why we're there. It's like if someone's having, crying, basically, just pitching a fit. The Walmart, the employees don't know how to de-escalate. And the other security guards I've found are pretty bad at de-escalating as well. But I think that's my special talent, is being around people that are, popping off, and just holding space and listening, because that's what they want. And when they're done, they're done. And then you can say something. The corporation's always going to respond with a solution for them that makes them satisfied. Honestly, that's kind of the experience of that. So that's where I'm at. I'm out here. I'm enjoying it very much. I've pretty much got off social media. This is, a pretty big dump of information, but hopefully it'll kind of stave it off for a little while longer. The dog killed a rabbit today. It was a small rabbit, and I cleaned the rabbit and ate. It's pretty gross, but put it in a bowl of water and microwaved it with mushrooms, and it was like almost no meat, but either that or I was going to feed it to the dog, but it's my landlord's dog, so I didn't want to so also I was curious if I could do it, and I looked up a video on how to field clean a rabbit, and yeah, it was okay. Much more natural than when I was a probably 12-year-old and I shot a deer, and I've had this complex about that immediately, basically, because that wasn't me shooting deer. Yeah, I mean, it was, but yeah, that was basically my dad trying to like make a man out of me, and that was a terrible idea. I didn't like my dad at that time, and you know what I mean. So it's kind of manipulated into that one. But yeah, there's a dead rabbit today, and I thought I'll use it. I guess that's it. I'm not gonna talk too much about like what I'm reading and watching and all that, but I'm not talking to very many people. I've kind of cut off, so if you want to contact me, you probably know how, and you can call me and we can talk about what I'm reading and watching, and otherwise what I do during the day is basically just move rocks around. So I'll be out here. It was good talking to you, and there's older money out here, and there's a potential. It's kind of a weird move to get outside the city, but what I was doing in the city was basically becoming a slave to it, and I was interacting with people that were trying to pull one over on one another all the time, and it just felt like stupid. So we'll see if it works out here. If I mean, what I do find is you can call businesses and they'll answer the phone and shop with you. They'll completely open up about the information that they have and try to help you and give you other people's phone numbers and try to steer you. This is not the case in the city. It's a big generalization, but when you do find that in the city, it's from a boutique. Who exists in the city? Corporations and expensive boutiques. I don't shop at expensive boutiques, but out here everyone's poor. You know what I mean, business-wise or whatever. And then to live out here, there's a lot of wealthy people. And the wealthy people come out here because things are slower, and the poor people spend the time, the working class spend the time to help them with their, building a coop or whatever, drilling a well. So I actually really like it out here a lot. It's a feast for the eyes here in Pennsylvania, and I suppose that's it. I found a painting buddy. People sit on boards of museums out here. People work at museums. A friend of mine is opening a gallery, and I'm going to help him move. I'm flirting with a couple businesses where I can hang paintings, mostly from photographs, but also just from drawings from photographs. They're like, just photograph is just a point of departure. So I'm organizing shows, and now I'm organizing them 4 months out, 5 and 6 months out, and then 7 months, 8 months, 9 months. So I've got a little buffer, but I have to kind of like rock and roll pretty soon and make the paintings. So I'm making thumbnails for them, and then I draw them, tight, transfer them, just like I learned in illustration school, and then use all the shit that I learned in painting school to make sure that it transcends illustration and it transcends photography, design, everything, sculpture. And I have some power tools out here via my landlord, so I can make frames. I think I might get power tools myself because some of my clients are wanting frames as well, and I don't want to hear my landlord bitch anymore ever about me using his things, which initially he's very adamant about sharing. That's the whole scheme, is like, it's all yours, mine, and ours, I'm a hippie, and then he'll call you and fuck you. So I'm just trying to stay at arm's reach in that situation. I think it's able to be navigated, and just try to stay quick on my toes, because he'll also try to cut my legs out from under me. I'm sure I know how that type of thing is. So yeah, I make paintings and I frame them as I go, and I'll start framing for clients, and I'll get a name for myself as someone who is reliable, shows up early in the morning, works like a motherfucker, and also has, I'm too busy to fuck around. I'm the ideal person you want working for you. And I've got ideas for just about everything. If someone wants a cabinet done or whatever, I've got the balls to bullshit and just build it, but also an idea of how I want to build it. It's not kind of like from Pinterest. It's from my experience with sculpture and construction thus far. So I'm really excited. I'm meditating and I'm talking to girls, but basically staying the same thing, and keep my autonomy. Let me show you this painting. I think it's kind of funny, right? So this I inherited, and he said, you can rip it apart. So I did, and I ripped it apart, and that's what the frame is built out of. It's a collage piece with acrylic gouache on top. It reminds me of the yuppiest shit ever that I experienced when I was like 12 probably. I was a gymnast. So we were at a gymnastics competition in Orlando, and we went to, I think it's called Disney Walk, and there was this like Buzz Lightyear laser tag, whole emporium, and what was it called? It was so cool. Really, for a 12-year-old, like the most ideal. It's like, it was retarded, but so cool. But anyway, yeah, for some reason it's so like I think it's a mom looking for her lost kid inside of a laser tag place, a Buzz Lightyear laser tag place. It's like, it's completely what it is. It's completely that gymnastics competition, because there's a red frame around a print from a work of art that we got at a gymnastics competition. They were really popular. It's like a little kid on rings or parallel bars, and then the shadow that is cast off of that is this like champion gymnast, and it was always kind of this illusion to, through practice comes greatness, and those were popular and pretty cheesy, and I had a couple of those. I was a pretty serious gymnast. I would go to gym for 4 hours a day, 7 days a week for 6 years. It didn't stunt my growth. I was kind of long for it. And it also gave me a lot of injuries, which I kind of sustained. I'm a little bit more sewn together now than I was, but I feel kind of taut or whatever. But at that time, I had a fucked up knee, all this kind of stuff, which is, it still kind of is there. It's just weird to have it when you're like 10. So that's it. I'm gonna go, and thanks for tuning in. We'll see if this is a good point of departure for me to begin to solicit my work. I'm trying to paint for a horse trials show and have a booth and sell to riders and horse owners. I'm trying to have a nature show at a marketplace where they sell like apples and pies, and hopefully $100 to $300 gouache paintings of the landscape. I think that would do really well in November and December for Christmas gifts. The owner hooked it up for me, basically. She's like, you want to be in here right after Thanksgiving. Don't fuck around. It's like, wow, that's very generous of you. Cool. Fancy restaurants that have called, only one, because I'm trying to do it month by month. So now I have September accounted for. Soon I have a phone call next week to confirm September horse trials, November marketplace, probably about a dozen nature paintings, $100 to $300. And I think it's January bar, February super fancy restaurant. I think it's gonna be a fucked up winter, but I'll take my time off then, basically, to paint like crazy. And then March, April, May, I think it's just gonna be like, a cheesy restaurant, pretty good restaurant, I think, and then like cafe. So that's what I've got. I've got bodies of work that are aimed at things. I'm also doing a commission for a client, which is helping me a lot. That actually might be how I actually paint from my heart, what I'm doing for that client. So it's pretty cool. It's 7 feet by 4.5 feet, stretched canvas, abstract. It includes everything that I've got. Graffiti, athleticism, kind of dumb stuff, maybe some intellectual stuff. Not really. It's kind of like, it's a little geek nerdy, but couldn't do it without intellect, hopefully. There's not that much smart stuff in there, but I want to say, like, yeah, I'm repeating myself. So that's about it. I applied to about 20 mural competitions and got rejected from them all, except I'm waiting to hear from 2, that one of which I think I have a good shot at, but who fucking knows? I got rejected by so many. The security guard job is kind of cool because for 5 hours a night there isn't any work, so I would just set up a painting station and paint through the night either digitally or in a sketchbook. Oh yeah, this is the other thing. I'm in a sketchbook show. It's a pretty big deal in Philadelphia. Not that it's like a big deal like everyone's, well, but it's at a real gallery. It's the Works on Paper gallery. The basically, I think it's the best gallery in Philadelphia. Best opportunity for me anyway. So I'm going to present a sketchbook in October of 2021. So because of COVID, we just set it way the hell back there. And so I've got a lot of time, but I want to really have a sketchbook that is insanely packed and beautiful and just a treasure. Something that, like the Book of Hours or something, but it already looks schizophrenic. So like a schizophrenic version of the Book of Hours. Something that's meticulous and just beautiful. Which sometimes the Book of Hours isn't. It doesn't have the lens flare and shit like that. It was all kind of like stained glass kind of looking, where it's like fill in the paint within the lines kind of stuff. So, okay.